Welcome to Managing Resistance. This is a community education program of Alzheimer's San Diego. My name is Amy Abrams, and I am the Director of Education with Alzheimer's San Diego, and very pleased to be co-presenting today with my colleague, Jean.
Hi, everybody. Nice to see you virtually.
We are Alzheimer's San Diego. We are a local nonprofit organization serving San Diego County, and our mission is to help families today while we work to find a cure for tomorrow. So quickly, here is our agenda before I turn things over to Jean. What we're going to be covering during the program here today on the topic of managing resistance. We're going to talk about the brain changes that happen in dementia, why people with dementia become resistant, and then give you hopefully some helpful, practical, useful strategies in terms of communicating with somebody who is resisting or refusing your assistance, and tips for providing hands-on help to somebody who is resistant to that help. And so then we will cover, of course, resources that are available for additional support. So to get everybody warmed up and figuring out how the chat box works, I would love, if you're open to it, this is strictly optional, take just a brief moment and in the chat, tell us who you are and why you're here, a particular challenge that you're facing, a question or a need that you have. We'd love to just see what's going on with you. Just give it a quick minute here and we'll watch for your answers. Difficulty getting husband to shower, yeah.
Yeah, we've got a couple of those.
Mm-hmm.
That's fairly common.
Yes. Looking for general tips, encouragement, yeah. Mm-hmm. Okay, yeah, this is a tricky one when somebody doesn't know that they have a diagnosis, when they're resistant to the whole problem, yeah. Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm.
Another difficulty with showering, anger, learning patience and being a more understanding caregiver, yes. Brushing teeth as well as bathing, showering, yep. All those things that require us to be in someone's personal space can be very difficult. Yeah.
Here we've got someone saying that their partner is just no interest in anything. It's hard to get him to do anything.
Yeah, so lack of interest. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Okay. Mom is adamant about moving. Mm-hmm. Dealing with obstinacy. It's a really good word. Yeah. Symptoms are progressing, resistant. Yep. Okay, great point here. Sometimes it's the caregiver who's resistant, not always the person with dementia. Yeah. Mm-hmm. Okay, we've got potentially abusive, combative situation, trying to figure that out. Yep, okay. Someone who's not caring for themselves, not cooking, right. Paying bills. Okay.
Somebody who's having hallucinations and is upset because his spouse doesn't see the hallucinations.
Yeah, it's really tough. Okay. Thank you, everyone, for sharing those situations with us. Please feel free to keep those going. Keep those notes coming. We'll be keeping an eye on that. Remember that the Q&A box is what you can use to submit a question that you want us to address during the program. But we will be keeping an eye on the chat box as well as we go. Okay, Jean, I will turn it over to you.
Okay, well, thank you, Amy. Okay, folks, so what we're going to get started with here today is the causes of resistance that care partners are experiencing when they're living and caring for a person with dementia. And of course, if I had the quick and easy answer, I would just give it to you like that and we'd be all said and done here today. But unfortunately, it doesn't work that way. So what we want to do is first just start with some basics here to make sure we're all coming from the same place in terms of knowledge. And we're not going to address specifically Alzheimer's disease today, but just to say overall, dementia is the term that is used to describe the set of symptoms that is caused by some kind of condition that is going on that is affecting the brain. It's affecting cognitive function, and it is causing behavior changes. I really want to emphasize that because really that's what this class is all about, is behavior changes. And the dementia symptoms are interfering with just daily activities, and to a point that it is significant. It's causing problems for the person living with the dementia. It's causing problems for the family members and the care partners who are trying their best to assist the person. So dementia is not a specific disease, folks. There's many different types of dementia. Alzheimer's disease is the most common. However, there are others as well, too, that cause this change in cognition and memory and behavior. Dementia is not a normal part of aging. It is a different process. With aging, we do see some change in cognition and in our memory, but it's not to the point that it's really impacting our daily life. It can be an annoyance for sure, and I will attest to that, but it's not to the point that we're unable to carry out just our normal daily routines and care for ourselves. The most important part of this, what dementia is not for this class, is that it is not within the person's control. What is happening to folks living with dementia is happening in the brain. There is damage being done to all different parts of the brain. And so the changes that are occurring is not because of a desire to be ornery or to make you angry or to, kind of get back at you. It's not reactions and behaviors that are born out of intent. It's not within the person's control. That's what is happening when the disease is affecting the brain. So we've got a really nice picture of one of our beaches. I'm assuming it's San Diego here. And we look at that, and I don't know about the rest of you, the beach is a very calming place for me. It's a happy place for me. And so caring for a person with dementia, well, why is it so challenging, folks? Why is it so challenging? Well, we have the photo of the beach and the waves there because we want you to take a moment to picture yourself there at the beach and standing in the waves, and you see, the beauty of it. I mean, there is beauty in something I very much enjoy. And you smell the salt air and the fresh ocean air, and you feel the breeze, and it's all, lots of positives there. But in a moment, you can have a wave come crashing in, and you can get knocked over and pulled under. So what is, such a lovely thing and a beautiful thing can quickly become out of your control and have you kind of running, as it were, or swimming awash and in this churning surf. And it can be very challenging to figure out how to get out of this. What was good all of a sudden has turned. So, and we use this metaphor for you folks because we want you to think about how we have to be careful at the beach and be keeping our eyes on the waves. And in the same sense, you folks as care partners need to keep an eye on how things are impacting you and when you maybe need to put up your hand and say, look, I need some more assistance here. So, why is caring for someone with dementia so challenging? These are things many of you folks know, but let's just give some voice to it. Is that the person's needs are always changing, and day to day can be different, yesterday to today to tomorrow. Today, my person living with dementia might be having a really good day and is able to do their personal grooming and all this kind of things on their own with some instruction. But tomorrow, they may be completely dependent on me to really get in there and help them to be able to do these things. So it can be changing just day to day, and that can be challenging as a caregiver to keep up with that change, and it sometimes doesn't make any sense. And of course, our folks with dementia, they have good days and bad days, and as well, and also in terms of mood. So one day they're maybe cooperative with us, and maybe the next day they're not. Why is that happening? Is he doing that on purpose just to make me angry? No, it's because of the dementia. There's the physical demands of caregiving. And that, again, is everything from, we've seen some of these questions, bathing, trying to assist with bathing, lots of personal care, dressing, grooming, brushing teeth, this kind of thing. There are many physical demands. And it goes further than that, even just to think, if you've got your person living with dementia is still able to go in and make themselves a sandwich for lunch, and now all of a sudden you've got to do that as well too. So it can be very, the challenges of taking on more and more physical demands can be very insidious. It can happen very slowly until you are at the point you find yourself, you're really doing everything. There's sleep disruption, and again, I bet you there's lots of you folks out there will have personal experience with this one. If your person living with dementia is not sleeping, it's 99.9% certain that you're not sleeping as well too. And so when you couple being a care partner with being tired and overwhelmed, it's not a good recipe. There's social isolation, and this happens with the diagnosis of dementia for many families, excuse me, and care partners, but even more so now because we are sheltering in place. So there's just less that we're able to reach out for, less that we're able to reach out to do. And so that makes things more challenging also. So then we get our challenging behaviors. And as I've been saying, if our tank is a little on the empty side or a lot on the empty side, when those challenging behaviors come up, it's a lot harder to retain our patience and our empathy in communicating with our folks with dementia. And then, so all of this leads to resistance and pushback. And we get that from our folks with dementia, and we get that through life. And so let's delve into that just a little bit. First of all, what I want to say with our folks with dementia is particularly in the earlier and even in the more moderate or mid stages, kind of a hidden disease. And what happens is when a disease isn't physically apparent, we all have a tendency to just momentarily forget that that disease exists in that person. And so, for example, here we have the brain. We're showing two sides of a brain. And on the left side, your left side, is the healthy brain. And on the right is advanced Alzheimer's. And you can see physically that there's some big changes in terms of the advanced Alzheimer's side is smaller. We see some actual kind of holes and gaps in the brain tissue. And clearly there's just less mass there. If we were able to see that on a more regular basis, that would probably be very disturbing. However, it would be a visual reminder to us that this person has a disease that is affecting their behavior and their functioning and their abilities. I think, the thought that came to my head today as I was thinking about this is, if you have a broken leg, you are here with me, you live with me in my home, and you have a broken leg, and I'm cooking dinner, I'm not going to ask you to run out to the garden and pluck some tomatoes from the vine and bring them into me. I mean, if I did, I'd not be a very good housemate, would I? So, you know, but that's visible. We can see it. You're using crutches, and then I watch you trying to get out the door and get over. How are you going to pick tomatoes from the vine when you've got a pair of crutches you have to manage and a broken leg? So I want you to just try and put that in your head in terms of how we speak to our people living with dementia, what our expectations of them are, and you know how we need to kind of adjust that in terms of them living with dementia. Come on. My slide won't advance.
Okay, get it.
Thank you. So we're going to talk a little bit about the different parts of the brain and what is happening in these different parts. So first of all, let's talk about the temporal lobe, which is down here. I'm pointing at my screen as if you can see me doing that, but it's, you know, down here kind of in the middle, bottom middle of the brain. And this is, you know, where memory loss is occurring and where there's language changes occurring. We often call the temporal lobe, where is the seat of memory. So when there's damage going on in that area of the brain, what would be typical of some things happening? Well, maybe forgetting that you have medication you're supposed to take, that your doctor has prescribed it, and then you've all of a sudden got a care partner there in front of you with a little handful of pills, then you have to take these. And I've forgotten I need to take them. And so I'm like, no, I don't need to take any medications. I'm perfectly healthy. And we're setting up already a stage for resistance to taking medication because of the changes in memory loss. Then in the parietal lobe up here, kind of right up here, top, further back on the brain, this is where sensory perception is being processed, and we can have loss of dexterity in this area. And so how does that translate to a challenging situation with resistance? Well, have any of you had one of your folks living with dementia be somebody who layers on clothing? Because that happens, and can be layers and layers of sweaters, even a couple of pairs of pants. I've seen folks do that. And the reason for that is in part because they are having some sensory changes in their ability to perceive temperature. So while it may be, you know, it may be actually that they themselves are warm, their bodies feel warm, or maybe they're even a little sweaty, or it may be a really warm day out, but they're not perceiving air temperature, what the environmental temperature is, and what their own internal temperature is. And conversely, this is how we can have folks who are not dressed fully and appropriately during cold weather too. So that's where some of those resistant things can go on. Let's see what else we've got here. In the occipital lobe here at the back of the brain, we may see, and in fact usually see, visual field changes in our folks with dementia. Their peripheral vision gets, their field of vision gets smaller and smaller as the peripheral vision, their ability to perceive that is being reduced. And this can cause all sorts of problems, including balance problems. How would that lead to some challenging situations? Most certainly we saw a lot of questions about bathing. Bathing is a big one, and we're going to come back to that and talk about it. But here's an idea, is maybe some anxiety or agitation about bathing may be born out of fear because a person is unable to see what's in their periphery. And so you try to envision yourself, you're getting in the shower and all of a sudden you have all this water booming down on you, and somebody, you know, coming from behind, and you're naked, somebody's already stripped you down. Could be a pretty frightening experience. And then in the frontal lobe, here kind of behind our foreheads is where we see altered judgment and insight and these personality and behavior changes. So we may see a person who is refusing and resisting your gestures of care because they may not understand your intention, your agenda, and they may not be understanding, and recognizing in themselves the need for that type of support. They may be saying, I'm fine. I've got this. I don't need your help. So that's where we're seeing some of those areas of resistance. So what are some common personality and behavioral changes in people with dementia? Well, we definitely see decision-making and judgment impacted. And that can be, again, a thing like refusing medication. I don't need medication. I'm doing fine. I can just eat healthy and exercise and I'll be just fine. Or I don't need a bath because I just had a bath yesterday. And if I did need one, I'm an adult and I can figure that all out on my own. We may see agitation and combativeness. And, I want to just say with this one, we're talking about resistance. Not which one of us, any one of us, is going to not respond with some potential agitation and combativeness if we have somebody telling us what to do. Do you like being told what to do, Amy?
I do not.
You do not. Me either. And in fact, it's one of those things if somebody starts telling me what to do, other than I guess if it were like a police officer or a judge or maybe my mom. My mom still has some control over me there. But anybody else, and I get a little prickly because I don't need anyone telling me what to do. So, and that's our folks with dementia too. They can get prickly when they're being told what to do. We have difficulty with initiation and termination of tasks. And I noticed this was mentioned by somebody earlier on in the Q&A. And it's very common for folks with dementia to have a real lack of initiative and apathy towards many, many things. And so sometimes the things that work in those situations is to change how we are communicating with our folks so that we're not telling them what to do, we're directing them. And there is a subtle difference there. We can have confabulation, which I was thinking how best to describe confabulation. And I was looking up some, I have to admit, I was doing some Googling and looking it up. And I came across this term, which I really like, or rather this phrase. Confabulation is honestly lying. And it really is, because, our folks are not trying to spin us a tale when they say, I had a bath yesterday. They believe that they had a bath yesterday. They are honestly lying. So think about that as well, too. There's suspicion and paranoia, again, of other people's agendas and intents. And limited insight into care needs. And I saw a couple of these in the chat as well, too. For a person who's not recognizing their care needs, not acknowledging that they have dementia. They're saying there's nothing wrong. And limited insight into care needs means I don't need your help. You're offering it, but I don't need it. And of course, all of this then leads to, again, what we're talking about here today is resistance. And so we've got our work cut out for us when we're dealing with these things. So,
Keen, I just saw an interesting question pop up. What is the difference between telling someone what to do and providing direction?
Good. That's a great, excuse me, that's a great question. So, Amy, it's time for you to take a shower. You have not had a shower in 2 or 3 days, and frankly, there's a little bit of odor and we need to get that attended to. Come with me right now. We're going to get you in the shower. That's telling you what to do.
Yes.
And, it wasn't really nasty, but it wasn't really generous either, was it?
Right.
Amy, It's your spa day today. I've got the bathroom all set up for you and the shower's running, and we've got that nice citrus body wash that you like ready. Would you like to come with me? We'll head down the hall here and we'll head into the bathroom. And you just let me know if there's anything I can do for you to make it better. So that's, I think, a bit of an example. Now, I have to call myself out. I made a mistake there because I said, why don't you come with me to the bathroom? And we should not ask our folks those types of questions because they often will just say, no, that's okay. No, thanks.
Mm-hmm.
So we want to provide direction, but change the tone of it, make it positive, add some, just some of the little things that are motivators for people. So, and in fact, I happen to know that Amy really does like citrus scent. So that might be something that might pique her interest and be able to bring her in. Any other thoughts on that, Amy?
Well, that's actually something we're going to cover in the next section here on communication, but I think that's nicely put. It's sort of the difference between giving somebody a shove versus, putting bumpers around them so that they don't turn the wrong way, right? So that they're kind of, you're nudging them in the right direction rather than shoving or pulling.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay. So shall we move along here?
Yeah, we do have another question that just came in, but actually, if I may, I'm going to hold that one off. It's a great question. If you're trying to talk to a man about taking a bath, suggesting a spa day may not work. So yes, that is true, and we'll give you some tips on how to deal with that. Yeah.
Very good.
Okay.
All right, so let's turn things over here to Amy.
Great. Let's talk a little bit about effective communication, specifically as it relates to communicating with someone who is refusing your help. And just a quick note to say, if you haven't attended it in the past, please be aware that we have a full education program dedicated to the topic of communication techniques. It's called Communication Skills. We offer it regularly. We'll be offering it online again shortly here this summer, but it is also, there's an archived version of it available on our website in our webinar library if you want to know more about these techniques, but we'll give it a sort of a quick overview. First, I just want to sort of clarify what exactly we're talking about when we talk about a resistant person. When we talk about being resistant, that can mean many different things. And in your introductions that you gave us a few minutes ago, I saw examples of just about all of these things. Resistance can come in many different shapes and flavors. People do it in different ways. They do it for different reasons. It can look like just flat out, I don't feel like it, kind of flattening and pure apathy. I don't want to do that. I don't feel like doing that, or frankly, anything for that matter. So it can be sort of a passive apathy, or it can be a more direct refusal to do something. Right? It can look like arguing. It can look like fighting over whether or not I've already done this and we don't need to do it again. It can be physical, refusing your assistance. That can be verbal, or that can be actually swatting a person away, hitting, kicking, spitting, biting, things like that can absolutely happen. All of this comes down to saying no. These are all just different ways of a person verbally, either through their words or through their actions, putting their hands up and saying no to you. So if we look at resistance as it's that person's way in this moment of saying no to you, we can better kind of formulate a verbal response to it. Let's talk for a second about where that no really comes from. As Jean indicated, these conditions are internal and they're invisible in a lot of ways. And we really believe in learning about what's going on in the brain to help you understand to help you kind of separate the emotion from what's happening in those moments, from the facts of what's going on here. So all of us have a region in our brain, deep in our brain, called the amygdala. It is often referred to as our lizard brain or our dinosaur brain. It's a very primitive, very old part of our brain. It's the first part of our brain to complete development while we're still in the womb. It is the last part of the brain in nearly every type of dementia to sustain damage. It's a very remarkably strong, resilient part of your brain. And thank goodness for that. This is the part of your brain, this lizard brain, that keeps you safe. This is the part of the structure in your brain that fires off the hormonal response that allows you to flee from a dangerous situation, to have a fright response that sort of gets all the blood and the hormones to the organs or the parts of your body where they are needed to help you respond to a dangerous or threatening situation. And it's also the part of your brain that gets you ready for a fight, right? So this is the seat of your instincts, your fight or flight instincts, the amygdala. So this is the part of the brain that is mostly untouched in nearly every person who's living with dementia. And so for that reason, we see people sort of operating from a place of fear and defensiveness a lot of the time. I think understanding that all of these other structures, these other regions of the brain that Jean showed you, that's where the damage is. That's the seat of our logic, our reasoning, right? Our empathy, our ability to respond in a thoughtful and logical way. That's damaged. It's either working more slowly or it's not working at all. But the part of your brain that just puts your dukes up and keeps you safe, gets you out of that situation, or shuts this whole situation down entirely, that part of the brain works just fine. So it's the amygdala that is the part of our brain that would be the no sayer in these situations. Do you feel like going for a walk? Wouldn't a nice hot shower feel so good at the end of the day? It's been a long day. It'll be relaxing. It'll smell so good with that citrus body wash that you love so much. Right, my amygdala is the part, if that's the fastest and most effective part of my brain right now, it's very likely to say no and to respond with that apathy, that refusal, that resistance. Because if I say no to you, nothing about my current situation changes. I'm going to stay safe. If I say yes to you, I have to be able to imagine, to think through the sequence of steps that are going to happen next. Ooh, if I say yes to going out for a walk because I need a little bit of exercise, right? I have to be able to imagine, where are my shoes? What's the weather like outside? How's the sidewalk? What if I trip? There's all of these things I have to be able to think through. And if that's challenging to me because of disease in my brain, it's very normal and it's very common for somebody to simply say no, or to find some clever way of getting out of that thing. So no, I took a bath this morning. I don't need one, right? That's that confabulation, that honest lying that Jean's talking about, right? My brain is protecting me and keeping me safe and controlling my environment by simply saying no to you. So resistance is all about self-preservation, and it is not always, in fact, I venture to say it's usually not intentional on the person's part, right? They're really operating from a place of instinct. So we've spent a lot of time here talking about what's happening in their brain. And I want to just take a moment and talk to you about what's going on in your brain during all of this. Again, in your introductions, I saw several folks who mentioned that they just need to learn some better responses. Patience is something that a lot of people seem to be looking for. I want to come up with some way of dealing with this resistance that doesn't result in us getting in yet another argument. So keep in mind, I just talked to you about that little structure called the amygdala that's healthy and working just fine in the brain of the person who's living with dementia. Well, your amygdala is probably strong and healthy and working really well too. So when you are on the other side of that resistance, when you are the person who's getting the big no shoved in your face, when you are the person who is receiving argument and combativeness, I mean, certainly any one of us, right? If I swat at Jean, she's going to recoil. Her amygdala fired to get her head to sort of go back and go away from me. So that is to say, your amygdala is working great too, and your immediate response to someone's resistance, if your response is anger, if your response is trying to reason your way out of it, right? You're kind of fighting your way through this problem. If your response is defensiveness, no, of course I'm not trying to poison you. I'm trying to help you take your life-sustaining medication, right? You're coming up with perfectly reasonable, logical responses very quickly, but they're not the things that are really going to be helpful. So if instead of letting your primitive dinosaur lizard brain kick in and answer for you and respond very quickly, if what you can do instead is sort of give yourself a little pause, right? Imagine that image of that ocean, right? Just give yourself a second, take a deep breath. If you have time to take 2 or 3 deep breaths, so much the better. What you're doing is giving those other parts of your brain, not your amygdala, not your kind of, frankly, your dumb lizard brain, right? That just wants to shout out a quick, impatient, angry response. You're giving those other regions of your brain more time to kick in and think about, that was a no, right? That's my person trying to control their environment, right? Let me try to read a little more carefully into why they're saying no and respond to that instead of getting caught up in this situation. What this all comes down to, back to Jean's imagery of those ocean waves, this all comes down to responding rather than reacting. You're standing on, go back to this image of this shore, right? You're standing at that shoreline and a large wave is coming at you. Right? You have 2 choices. Any of us who spend time in the ocean are well familiar with this, right? If you stand firm, right, you keep your body rigid and you hold your ground against that wave, right? What happens, right?
The wave is going to win.
You're gonna get knocked over, right? What do you do instead when you're facing that big wave that's crashing overhead? Jean, what's the advice that a lifeguard would give you?
You dive under the wave.
Exactly. You dive in, right? You let that wave wash over you. You don't stand firm, hold your ground. You join in, right? So this is what we're talking about. In managing a person's resistance, we're not here to tell you how to stop the waves from coming at you. We're here to tell you, dive in, right? Let that wave wash over you. So we do that through a couple of techniques. There's a difference between reacting and responding. Reacting is when we tell somebody, no, Amy, you didn't have a shower this morning. It's been a few days now and you don't smell good, right? You're correcting me, you're confronting me with facts that either I've forgotten or they're really, those facts are not my current reality, right? You're trying to bring me into your reality. Correcting, confronting, and arguing is a natural and perfectly understandable form of reaction, but that is you standing there against that wave, right? And it's gonna knock you back. Whereas responding, diving in, letting it roll over you, is validating to that person, right? When somebody's telling you, I don't need to take a shower, I just took one this morning. Right? Saying something that validates that person's experience rather than trying to convince them, no, it's been 3 days since you took a shower. Saying something that's more along the lines of, I know it's so tiresome having to take a shower every day. It really gets old. I get it. Right? Saying something, we're not arguing about when I took my last shower. I'm just agreeing with you. Yeah, it does kind of suck that you have to take a shower, but here's how it is, right? It's actually very simple if you break it down, but it does take some some thoughtfulness, right, to respond rather than to react with the facts of that situation. So when we respond, we validate, we reassure the person, it's okay that you feel this way. I know you hate taking medication, right? I know that it's the shower is frightening, right? That floor is slippery, right? Letting the person know however they're feeling, whatever it is that they're saying no to, even if you're not totally sure what that thing is, letting them know that it's okay that they feel that way. That's reassurance. You're not necessarily telling them that they're right. You're just agreeing that that's how they see it. Right? Do you see the difference there? I hope that's a helpful distinction. Ultimately, our goal is always to redirect, right? And again, think about that wave. If you dive in, it goes over you, it keeps going behind you, right? The energy is moving in a different direction. And that's ultimately what we're always trying to do with a person with dementia who's being resistant, who's being argumentative or combative with us. We're trying to get that energy sort of channeled into a different direction. But it is important that we not just try to sort of shunt that wave in a different direction. You have to validate the person, let them feel seen and heard and understood before you try to redirect that energy somewhere else. So what it all comes down to, when you're reacting to someone, you're thinking about your own words. You're thinking about what you're going to say next. Whereas when you're responding to somebody, you're watching the wave, right? You're listening to not only the words that they're saying, much more importantly, you're listening to the emotion that they are expressing. You're listening, you're focusing on them when you are responding. So in summary here, some communication techniques, using as calm and reassuring of a tone as you can. Remember, your amygdala is going to fight you on this, right? When you're being confronted or you're being argued with, your instinct is to what? You get louder, right? You lean in and you argue back. But do your best to take that deep breath and remember to respond with calm reassurance. When you are trying to communicate something that needs to happen, simplify your speech, right? Talking in very short and clear sentences, providing very limited directions, instructions, one step at a time. Think about doing everything as slowly as you possibly can, right? In your physical movements as well as in your verbal communications. This may require you to repeat yourself, right? Saying the same thing over and over again because the person is asking the same question over and over again, or because you're giving a prompt and it's just not connecting, it's not landing, they need to hear it again. So repeating yourself calmly, right? If it's the third or fourth time you're saying it, remember that amygdala is probably starting to tick up because you're getting irritated. That's very normal, that's very natural. Take a deep breath and say it again as calmly, as kindly, as generously as you can, and say it the same way, right? Without the irritation or the impatience or the, I just told you this, right? You don't need to say those things out loud. Think them, very normal to think them, but let it be private, right? Validate and just show agreement in some way, whatever that means in that particular situation. Somebody who is apathetic and just they don't want to do anything. They just want to sit there and watch TV, right? You're probably not going to get anywhere literally trying to like grab them by the wrist and get them out of the house. You can start by saying, I know, I feel pretty lazy today too, right? Just showing them that I understand where you're coming from, even if you don't really feel that way. That's what we mean by agreement. One of the most effective ways that we can validate another person is to just kind of own up, apologize, right? I'm going to quietly, silently forgive this person for being difficult with me right now because I remember that image that Jean showed me of that brain and the damage that's happening in there. I'm going to be forgiving about this, and I'm going to eat a little bit of crow maybe and just apologize, right? Gosh, did I forget to tell you that we have this appointment coming up? I'm really sorry. I've been busy. It must have just slipped my mind, even though you know perfectly well. You told them many times, it's on their calendar. You could prove it if you had to, right? It doesn't matter in this moment. Be forgiving of them, and apologizing is a really effective way to validate another person. Ironically, the most effective communication technique I can teach you is simply talking less. And Jean's going to go through some strategies for providing help in a couple of scenarios, a couple of different caregiving situations. And I think this is one theme you're going to see addressed a few times, that often the most effective way for us to help somebody is just to show them how to do it, to get it started, instead of trying to initiate a discussion about whether or not we're going to get up and get out for that walk, whether or not, do you need to go to the bathroom, yes or no, right? We don't need to engage in the conversation. Let's just get this task started. So before we move into that section, I'm going to do a quick pop quiz for you. Okay, I hope everyone can see this little box that should be appearing on your screen about responding versus reacting. This is multiple choice, so click anything that you think is appropriate here. The following are ways of responding to what a person with dementia is expressing rather than reacting to the words that they said. Go ahead and check any and all of those that you think are methods of responding to someone. Correcting them, reassuring them, validating them, or confronting them, challenging them. Give this just a few more seconds. About half of you have voted. Yeah, I mean, what's wrong with showing the person if they did something wrong, right? Let's make it right. Yeah, great.
Well, that works sometimes with people with no dementia.
Right.
Sometimes it doesn't work with anybody.
Yeah, that's right.
It's not particularly effective with folks with dementia.
Okay, I'm going to go ahead and close this and show you the results, right? A whopping 97% of you felt that reassuring the person, reducing their worry or uncertainty was a way of responding to them. That is absolutely correct. And 96% of you believe that validating, so you were listening, affirming that the person is correct or that their feelings are valid, right? Absolutely, those are the two correct answers to that question. So thanks for participating with us in that.
Okay. Ooh, sorry. I just got to close that little box. So we're going to go on here and talk about tips for providing help. And we will start generally, and then we'll start talking a little bit about more specifics. So how do we do this? Well, when we're providing care, again, go back to what I talked about and what Amy talked about, is that the dementia is causing this progressive loss of function. So we need to, again, be the ones who are adjusting how we speak to, how we approach our folks living with dementia, and oftentimes adjust our agendas so that it's focused on, just as Amy mentioned in the last couple of slides, so that our focus is on listening to them and responding to them rather than our agenda of getting things done and reacting to the responses we get. So the goal is autonomy. It's not independence. Our folks living with dementia are dependent on us. And in fact, not one of us is really truly independent. We are dependent on others for various parts of our lives, various functions of our daily life. And that continues with our folks with dementia. So we want to support autonomy. We need to give people a chance to do some self-governing, which is what autonomy is all about. Again, going back to the pushback with resistance is because we don't like being told what to do and how to do it and when to do it. Even though dementia is eroding our ability to carry out those functions within folks, it just seems to be a part of our souls that seems to just stay very preserved about, I want to be in charge of my life. I want to make my own decisions here. So we need to give people some latitude to be able to do that. So we need to set reasonable expectations, and that goes on both sides, both of what we expect them to do and you know, what we expect of ourselves in the situation, coming out of the situation. Be reasonable as to what you're going to be able to accomplish. If a bath cannot be accomplished today, set up plan B and plan C. You know, be reasonable about it. So if mom is refusing to bathe today, maybe I could get her to the sink and we could do a little, like what I call a little bird bath. So be reasonable. And that's also going then along with being flexible. Is, you know, some days things, the plans are just not going to work. And there's some days that we need to just say, okay, we gave it a shot today. Let's just give it a break now, because we don't want the day to turn into this long day of being angry and upset with each other. It's not good for anybody. So be flexible, and most certainly do tasks with the person, not to them or for them. So in as much as possible, set up these tasks, these activities, these situations, so that you are in this together. You're doing these things together. And I'll just add, as Amy mentioned earlier as well too, when you're going into a care situation or going into a task, don't go in, as I'm thinking about it, in a hurry and a flurry, you know, gangbusters. Give lots of time. As Amy said, slow it down, not only in terms of time expectation, but in terms of your communication, your voice, your speech, your tone. Slow down your physical presence. You don't need to come in and just start, okay, get the shower going and get the towel out and, you know, let's get a move on. Slow it down. And likewise then with your, whatever your direction may be, slow that down. You don't need to give people all of it all at once. And sometimes you don't even need to give any verbal instruction. Remember what Amy said, talk less, listen more. So create a dementia-friendly environment, regardless of where the care situation is going to take place. We have a picture here. It looks like it's a bar of soap and a soap dish. So it could be the kitchen, it could be the bathroom, but I want you to think beyond that. It could be any one of a number of environments. And being uncluttered is really important. And I guess I will just say we will talk about bathing, but I think that's especially true in the bathroom, but it's generally true overall. It's very unsettling in some way for folks, this has been my experience, for folks living with dementia to come in and see all sorts of things, stuff on the counter or on, you know, the kitchen counter or, you know, on the night table beside the bed. All sorts of stuff means that's more stuff they need to look at and attempt to process. And that's tough for these folks. Be prepared with whatever essential items you need for that particular care situation. And minimize distractions as best as you can with regards to sounds, other activity, and or mirrors, for example, in the bathroom. Sometimes mirrors can be very disorienting to folks living with dementia in that they may not recognize that the reflection in the mirror is themselves and their care partner. They may perceive it as being, there's other people here in the bathroom. I'm not going to take my clothes off when these people are watching. So that is something to be thinking about. It can be an issue for folks. Make sure that whatever it is accessible, safe, and with comfortable seating. that the lighting is really good. Sometimes, rooms, bedrooms, other rooms can be very, a little on the dark side, and we want to amp up the lighting as best as we can for our folks with dementia. And for sure, make sure it's a comfortable temperature. I'll come back to that in a minute here too. So we'll go on with the example of bathing and showering. I know lots of you have questions about this. And let me just say, we're just going to talk generally here. We will be taking, as we have been throughout here, questions. If you've got a real specific situation regarding bathing and showering, please do call our number, which you see at the bottom of the slide, 858-492-4400, and speak to one of our social workers so we can help you do some individualized problem solving with this and any of the other challenges you may have. So with bathing, what is good to do? Well, again, get the supplies you need in advance. And if there's, again, this what I refer to as the stuff on the countertops, get rid of that. I mean, get it down below, under, in the cupboard under the sink, so that just what you need is out. And then again, if necessary, cover the mirror. With regards to lighting and temperature though, I mean, maybe you want to have the shower running a little bit beforehand with the door closed so the air is kind of warm in there. Give simple and direct prompts. So we don't, again, need to go into big explanations. Come on, let's go. I need you to take off your clothes, get undressed because it's time for your shower. And, we go on, and we do tend to do that, is talk away. So keep it simple and direct. Your bath is ready. Let's go. Respect privacy and modesty with the use of towels or clothing. Nice to have a big fluffy robe for our folks that feel chilly, and many of them do, just as a matter of course, but perhaps even more so, when they've disrobed prior to getting in the shower, but also after they come out of the shower and have been dried off, get them into a big fluffy, nice robe. And then just think about the things you can do, as I said earlier, to kind of, make it enhance the experience by using nicely scented washes and soaps and, nice towels and this kind of thing, so that it's hopefully some pleasure involved in the experience versus challenge and resistance. With medication management, most certainly give the most important medications first. And if you are uncertain as to which medications are the most important, please do talk to the pharmacist. Amy and I talk often about how the pharmacists are often underutilized health professionals that can be a part of your team. So do have some good conversations with your pharmacist. Consider the time of day and consider what is their best time of day. Is it morning? Is it early afternoon, late afternoon? For some people, it's the evening. What is the best time of day? And that would be potentially the time of day to take the medication. And again, going back to talking with the pharmacist about all of these different things. So what's most important, what is absolutely necessary, and what if somebody is saying, no, I've had enough, what are the pills, the medications that are least likely to impact your person's health. Also, with regards to dosing, how the dosing goes, is it 2 times a day? If it is, you bearing in mind if somebody is better in the late afternoon than they are at other times of day, then you've got to figure that out. How do you get 2 times a day doses in there? And then look at the format, the tablets, the capsules, the liquid, or the crushing, and don't do any of those things until you have discussed it with the pharmacist, because there are some medications that should not be put in liquids, that should not be crushed. So any of those things, don't, take it into your own hands. Talk with the pharmacist about some of the challenges. And then think about the things we've talked about already, to not do to them or for them, but do with them. Come on, it's time to take our medications. Now, even if you're somebody who doesn't take medications, maybe you could take a vitamin E tablet or a vitamin of some kind with them, so that you're taking medications along with them. It's not something you're doing to them. The other good part of this is you're modeling the behavior. Perhaps you sit down to breakfast together, and maybe you don't even need to say anything about medications other than to put the pills maybe on their plate before the food is there. And you put your pills on your plate, you sit down, you take your medication. You're modeling the behavior for the person with dementia. It may be something you don't need to have a conversation about. It's worth a try.
Jean, can I just chime in here? We have a question, someone who was asking for an example of what it would look like to do a task to someone. So I just want to point out what Jean is describing right now is a good example of that, right? Taking the pill and, you know, trying to get the person to open their mouth and get that pill in there. That's doing a task to someone. Whereas sitting down let's take our vitamins together, right? That kind of a thing is doing that task with them.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. So for getting dressed, you know, for folks living with dementia, for them, and really for you folks as care partners, we need fairly simple and comfortable clothing and footwear. So look for those kind of things, you know, t-shirts or polo shirts that can be easily pulled on. Maybe a better choice maybe than buttons, because buttons can take more time and be complicated. So just think about what you may be able to do in terms of looking at the clothing that's available and what is simple and comfortable and easier to get into when you're getting dressed. Lay the clothing out in order, and what we mean by that is in order of how we put these items on, which would mean on the bottom of the pile, let's just say a pair of pants, and on next up would be the t-shirt, and then on top of that would be the underwear or the bra and the socks, so that, you know, the undergarments and the socks go on first, and then these other things one by one. And do it one by one. You know, okay, let's put your socks on. That's sufficient. Then move on to the other items. Do respect choices and privacy. Again, we're going back to autonomy. And, you know, I again just use the example of myself and Amy, yourself, and all of us. I don't particularly want to be told what to wear. I have my own ideas, and you know, if somebody tells me what to wear, I'm likely to be resistant to that and argue with them. However, giving choices can be really helpful. That is allowing autonomy, because then you're giving me the opportunity to say what I wish to wear. You've offered me, say, 2, maximum 3 choices, and I'll say, I choose this one. So that's a good way to honor autonomy while limiting choices and kind of, I guess, controlling the environment a little bit more. Provide simple directions and cueing as is necessary, and physical and verbal cueing. You know, verbally can be like, put on your shirt, and then give people the idea of how we, you know, put our arms in the holes and pull it over our head. So there's some physical cueing. And then the other thing that I'll just say is, you know, we can simplify the task from the get-go by getting out of season clothes out of the closet. Get those winter sweaters or coats or whatever it might be, anything, flannel shirts. You know, we're getting into a little bit warm weather now here, so it's a good time. If they're not in the closet, chances, you know, I mean, get them put into another closet or into storage in the garage or whatever it might be, so that it doesn't become an issue that they're putting on these heavier items of clothing that is not appropriate for the weather. For meals and eating, and this is an important one too, consider the timing and schedule and coursing of meals. We all have different body rhythms as to when And some people like to eat breakfast, some don't. Some folks like to eat lunch at 11:30 in the morning. Others are okay with eating at 2:30 in the afternoon. Think about your person living with dementia and over the course of their years and their life, what their mealtime routines have been, and do your best to honor those routines and schedules. As far as coursing is going, please don't overload the plates with food. I've seen this too many times, and I'll tell you, it's enough. It's like all the jars and sprays and things and stuff in the bathroom counter. It's clutter. It can be so much so that it turns them off of the food. And I've seen this happen in facilities. I worked in memory care for 10 years. And if you've got a plate that's piled with, the salad and the vegetables and the hamburger, and then you've got the milk, and then you've got the coffee, and then you've got the dessert, I've literally just seen people look at it and not do anything. And then, I've said, would you like some help with that? Or, what, are you not hungry? It's just like, and I've had responses that have been like, there's too much. There's too much there. So that can definitely, deter appetite. Think about foods that require the use of utensils versus finger foods. At some point in time, for most people with dementia, the use of utensils becomes challenging, and they can't figure out how, what utensil does what and how to use them all properly. So keep an eye on that and be prepared to start moving to finger foods. And if your person is starting to not use their utensils and eat with their fingers, then that's already telling you it's time to do that. So don't be dismayed or be correcting them or, react to it as if it's kind of disgusting, because it's not. And it's part of what's happening to the damage to their brain and what they're able to make sense of. They want to eat, they're hungry, but I don't know what those silver things are or what they're supposed to do. So I'm just going to do what our brains tell us, our very instinctive brains tell us as we use our hands. So provide your simple directions and cueing, again, with verbal and physical cueing. And eat together. And again, you can be a mirror for, and a model for how these things are to happen. And you'll oftentimes see folks with dementia, they are paying attention and following you. And if you start to eat, it's like, oh, okay, you're giving them the physical cue and the model of what to do, and they may start as well too. So again, for all of these different areas of care, do your very best to honor personal preferences, rituals, and routines in as much as possible. Consider the time of day. And again, are people when are they at their best? When is the good time to introduce a shower? If they're not a morning person, maybe morning's not the right time to do it. I have a brother-in-law. His routine, he showers every night before he goes to bed. I think he's the only person I know who does that. Everyone I know showers in the morning. That's his routine. So we have to go with that. It's different from how I do things and how many other family members do things, but that's what works for him. Provide your validation and your reassurance in all the different ways that you can, keeping in mind that we're not seeing the damage that is happening to the brain here today, but it is occurring. And thinking about how many of these scenarios can be so confusing and so scary for our folks living with dementia. Make your requests positive and action-oriented. Again, it's time to take our pills. Let's try it this way. And the other things you can think about is ask them to help you or support you in doing some of these things. I think it's time for me to go brush my teeth, but I'm having some problems with my new toothbrush. Why don't you come along with me and see if you can help me? And then that's maybe setting up a situation where you can brush your teeth, get some input from them. It doesn't matter if they are not able to tell you how to use it, or what they tell you is nonsensical. Listen to them and acknowledge them, give them value and they're responding to you, and at the same time be modeling. You can be giving them a toothbrush with toothpaste on it and says, show me how you do it. Think about the different ways you can approach these things. So there it is, do with, not to or for. So take a deep breath. There we are. We're back at the surf. Take a deep breath. You know, we've talked about all sorts of different information today. It's a lot, and we acknowledge that. And, you know, you folks are all in a tough position, a tough job, a necessary job. And just think about what Amy talked about with the wave, that if you stay rigid and firm, can knock you over, versus diving in and going with it. Don't be caught swimming alone in the ocean. That's not a good idea, folks. And in the same way, don't be caught as a care partner trying to do it all, provide it all 24/7 on your own. Reach out for help. Let's get you connected, supported. Amy's going to talk about some of the supports and resources and Alzheimer San Diego. And just before we continue on with that, just take a deep breath with me, folks. Nice deep breath. All right.
Thank you, Jean. We've had a few very interesting questions come in. A few of these are sort of related, so I will try to summarize and condense a couple of them. So if you hear your question asked in a strange way, that's why. If somebody, I think something a lot of care partners struggle around is how much to let the person do, right? If they still can make the bed, if they still can get the toothpaste onto their toothbrush, shouldn't I be doing that for them? I mean, shouldn't I be having them do that for as long as they can, up until, you know, because if I step in and start doing these things, aren't they going to lose the ability to do them sooner? Super important question. And it's a tricky answer, and it requires us to address one of the very hard truths about dementia. And that is that at this point, people don't get better, right? These conditions progress and people lose function over time. As Jean indicated at the beginning, certainly people have good days and bad days, and good hours and bad hours, and you might not be able to do something right now, but you'll be able to do it a little bit later, right? Certainly that is possible. The simple answer is yes, let the person do as much as they can, as long as they can, right? Up until the point that they can tolerate it. We don't want to be challenging somebody. Come on, I know you can do this, right? Instead, see what they're able to do and step in and start to provide those verbal cues, that physical assistance, come alongside them and begin to do those things with them when they no longer can, rather than challenging them and pushing them to try to do more. Our impulse is to try to like rehabilitate the person, right, the way we're used to caring for when we're raising children, right? We're trying to help them develop new skills. When we're helping somebody recover from a stroke or an illness of some kind, we're trying to challenge them. When we're doing PT, right? You push until the point of failure. That doesn't really work in dementia. We just want to push to what the person can do, let them do as much as they can do. And also sometimes it's okay if they do things, as Jean said, turn something that isn't actually finger food into finger food, right? Okay. So kind of know where that balance is. And a related question that I think is really a really important one is where do I draw the line between letting the person be in charge, but also kind of navigating their safety, right? If a person is truly resistant to taking that life-sustaining medication, or truly refusing to take a bath, right? We're trying to help them feel as in control, as autonomous as we possibly can, but absolutely you have to balance that with the person's general well-being, right?
Yes.
They're because of that damage in their brain, they're not always able to make reasoned, fully informed choices. It all comes down to making an informed choice. So if the person is not able to say, I'm not going to take this medication because I've decided I no longer want to take it for these 3 very logical reasons, right? Then yeah, there does come a time when you have to push in the name of the person's basic health and safety, and it is okay. It is okay to do that.
Yes,
Can you
I
add there,
totally
Jean?
agree. Yeah, just that, I'm just repeating what Amy said, but that there is a point in time for many folks living with dementia where their safety and their well-being supersedes their desire to remain autonomous and their resistance to things. So that's, and we hope you don't get to that point. And if you are having some challenges in those areas already with important things like medication, let's say bathing, let's say driving, please get on the phone to us and talk to our team of social workers so we can start problem solving and trying some different ways to figure this out with you and figure some go-arounds rather than letting it continue on as a challenge in an area of resistance, in an area of care that's important.
We have a couple of questions about dealing with somebody who has a fixed false belief, sometimes referred to as a delusion. So I'm looking at this. If a person says, I can't eat all that, my doctor is telling me to only eat 1 bite, right? That isn't true, but there's no way to refute it. If that's the person's reality, what exactly how exactly should you respond? There was another similar question, somebody who has sort of a fixed belief that she has an illness, and she's fixated on the idea that she's going to be diagnosed with cancer, and can't seem to get past the idea, can't seem to remember the doctor has checked this out and you're okay. Do you have any thoughts on that, Jean?
I'm going to talk about I can only eat 1 bite. I think how I might try and respond to that is, I'm not going to argue with them that it was 1 bite. I think what I might actually try is that, I read that the doctor wrote it as 10 bites, not 1 bite. So yeah, 10, not 1. And see if that's enough, that then they'll take 10 bites instead of 1.
Right. So you're not arguing about whether or not this conversation even happened. You're sure that it didn't, but you're just sort of trying to work around it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And with the belief that I have cancer when I don't, I think I would just, you may have to put this on repeat. It sounds like you will, but to continue reassuring your person who believes they have cancer that you don't need to say you don't have cancer, it's been checked out. Just let all that go. This is some kind of underlying worry, concern. So reassure. I know you're worried about it, and I worry about it too. We're going to stay on top of things. We see the doctor regular, and the doctor is a good team member. Let me know if you're feeling, different about something, or you have a physical concern. and we'll make sure we get it addressed.
Yeah.
Reassurance, reassurance, reassurance.
It is okay to sort of name somebody's fear. I think sometimes we feel concerned about saying it out loud. I know you're worried about these symptoms. I know you're worrying about getting a cancer diagnosis, but it can be very powerful to somebody just to hear reflected back to them. Somebody hears what I'm worrying about.
Mm-hmm.
So yes, to Jean's point, it may require having that conversation repeatedly. It's going to take grace and patience on your part, but letting the person know it's really okay that you're worrying about this. I'm here for you. Right? You don't necessarily need to get on the phone and have a fake phone call every time it happens, right? But providing that type of reassurance, it really is okay to acknowledge. I know you're feeling scared, and it's okay that you do.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. There's I want to come back to that good early question that was asked. What about trying to get a man to bathe? Right? What's something that you might say? You talked, Jean, about using action-oriented verbiage when you're talking to somebody about getting in the bath, for example. What's something that you might say rather than trying to talk about the spa day?
Come on, fella, let's head to the locker room.
Get cleaned up.
Yep.
Yeah. Calling it something else.
Yep. Maybe saying, it depends on the personality of the person, but, I think about, my husband and all the different things he does in life. He's always, outside of his work, he's always really busy here at home. He likes to do things and he's busy physically. So if it were him, I'd say something like, come on, fella, let's head to the locker room. You're getting a little stinky from all that hard work you did today. So let's get you all spruced up. Yeah.
Finding that little point of leverage it's very personal. It's very individual to that person. And it may not always work, so it's good to have a few kind of strategies in your pocket.
Yeah. And note that in that, I'm saying all that hard work you did today. So there's a compliment in there. There's a validation, a positive remark. So that might work. And it might not, but that's what we have to do in a role of a care partner, is try some of these different things. And some days they work and some days they don't.
Okay. Well, we have a few unanswered questions. We just want to acknowledge we see them. We're running up against our time, so we're going to keep moving forward here. But I'm now going to talk with you about resources for getting questions answered and finding more support. So please know our team is here to respond to individual questions that you might have about your specific situation. So Jean said it before, it's a really important point. You don't go into those ocean waves by yourself, right? You got to have some backup. So doing what you're doing today, learning what you can, really helps you to reduce your anxiety around these things. Just feeling more confident that you understand the symptoms, you know what to expect, goes a really long way. Find those community resources. We at Alzheimer's San Diego are, of course, one of them, but we're just one of many providers here in the San Diego community that are available to provide backup and support. You need a break from this. You cannot be doing this 24/7. These days are particularly tough. We know that. Your normal sources of respite and getting a break, having somebody to come in and help you, having your person go to a day program, or even moving them into a residential care setting, those options are limited at this point. So that break may need to look like, bringing in one of our virtual companions just to keep the person busy for a few minutes, right? While you can go into the next room and just take a little bit of a breather. But those daily breaks are essential. You really need to find support that makes you feel safe. You need a place to ask these hard questions that you've been asking here today. If you are not already actively participating in a support and discussion group, I can't recommend it enough. These folks are real life in your shoes, living your experience. They can be a font of wisdom and support to you, and just practical advice. Here's what we did in my house. Maybe this would work in yours. And if it won't work, maybe it'll just set off a light bulb in your own idea, or an idea of your own in your own mind. So we will show you how to find our online support and discussion groups. And remember that the lobbies room will open up after this webinar ends, and you're welcome to go in there and chat with your fellow attendees in search of that connection and support that's so important. So Alzheimer's San Diego is offering a wide array of online and virtual support right now. Clearly, you found your way to our education program. We do a live education program every week, but we also have a webinar library. We have our virtual Alz companion visits, volunteers helping people with FaceTime or Zoom, just having virtual visits, keeping company, going on a tour of the zoo or a museum or something together. We have volunteers that are sewing masks for us, for you, I should say. So if you're in need of some more face coverings, we're probably going to need to be wearing those for quite some time yet. Give us a call, let us know, we can send some out to you. You met Elizabeth. Our volunteer tech team is not just here to support you in classes. If you are interested in doing virtual visits, for example, but you're not sure how FaceTime would work or how to set up Google Hangouts or some such thing, that's what that tech team is there to help with. We have online social activities, our movement and motion classes. We're doing short, condensed little video versions. If you just can't motivate somebody to get outside for some fresh air and get out for a walk, maybe you can turn on one of those little videos. Danny, our movement and motion instructor, is just amazing. She's very motivating. Pop one of those on and sort of sit down and start moving together, for example. We have 20 or 21 different support and discussion groups now that are meeting online. You can find the directory of those on our website. And then most important, I think, is our social work team, our team of dementia care consultants, available Monday through Friday, 8:30 to 5 by phone. You can email, you can just go to our website and the little live chat box will pop up and you can talk with one of our staff. If you are in need of support, you have questions, you need resources, that's what they are there to do. So again, if you've got a specific question about your particular situation, your challenge, and you want to talk with someone about strategies you might try, or after this class, you go home and you try some of these things and they're just not working, right? Or you need to make a little bit of a tweak. Give us a call, ask to talk with a social worker, and they can certainly talk you through your situation and maybe come up with a couple of different ideas. So again, you can reach us through our website, by phone, or by sending an email anytime. We're going to go ahead and wrap up the webinar here today. When the webinar closes, you're going to get a link to an online survey. It's just a couple of questions. It's very brief. It's anonymous. We would love your feedback on this program and others. If you have ideas for other programs you'd like to see us offering, again, you will be receiving an email. Everybody that was registered for this will get an email with a copy of our slides that we used here today. There's information about our 2 next programs that are coming up later this month, and all of that information is available, of course, on our website.